It's time. This 3-month road trip is coming to an end. The last few days of an excursion like this are always infused with an odd mix of anticipation and wistfulness. And for us, one bonus destination on the final drive through the Southern California hills. Breakfast in Buellton was pretty tasty. I'd stay away from the biscuits, though. And we headed out of town, going south, closer to Los Angeles, where we're flying out of to go back to Japan, where we both live. One of the first things we did was pass through a city called Solvang. Thanks to early Danish settlers, Solvang has a convincing and totally out-of-left-field Scandinavian feel to it. It was made even stranger for me by the fact that I was playing Weird Al Yankovic's first album in the car. Disparate worlds colliding, just like any good trip. The destination today is on the other side of the Santa Ynez Valley, the city of Simi Valley. We got reservations at a hotel for 3 nights to prepare for the end of this epic journey. The fields and coast and hills and valleys were especially gorgeous and fun to drive through, as they have been, but this time there was a kind of distance between us and them. We've seen all this. Nice as it is, it's been our life for the past 3 months. Occasionally pausing your travel helps you refresh. Time off the road makes time on the road that much more special. I drove without regret. It's the right time to end this trip. Somehow, at the sprawling Best Western in Simi Valley, I'd ended up reserving something called the Executive Suite. Separate living room and bedrooms. Our other hotels on the trip can't say that. A nice home for 3 days, with no side trips or other destinations whatsoever on our schedule. Lunches were used to finish up the remaining picnic food from the cooler. Dinners were fast food. Breakfasts were great, a buffet every morning out on the patio next to the pool, including Sequoia brand oranges, a little wink from the travel gods. We took advantage of the pool and even watched TV, which we've hardly done on this trip. And I'll say this to my fellow Americans, there sure are a lot of ads for medications and pills on TV in the US. Most importantly, of course, we went through our things. We cleaned some and separated everything into keep or not keep. Get rid of the campsite lighters, keep all of the brochures. Source material in case I want to make a series of videos about this trip someday. We took our pile of stuff we didn't want to a local Goodwill. Nice to lighten the load, and good to get out of the hotel for a drive. It was 4th of July weekend, if you couldn't tell. On day 89, we checked out for the final drive to return the car down in Los Angeles. Outside Simi Valley, I took one last unnecessarily small and out-of-the-way side road, and I'm glad I did. we passed something that made us stop and turn around. A national park site. I had no idea it was even here. Down an obscure leafy path sits the visitor center for Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. One final collectible pin and one bonus brochure. This one explains that this area encompasses various public and private lands around the long, narrow east-west mountain range. In fact, according to the 3D model in the map, we drove quite a bit through this MPS site just minutes after picking up the car on day one. As it happens, this visitor center is only about 5 miles away from where we spent the first few days of the trip in Thousand Oaks, adjusting to the time zone and gathering supplies. Well, this trip is just tying itself up into a nice little package. And that, finally, was the actual last national park site on the trip. A perfect ending. Back on the coast, we drove through Malibu, going the opposite way along the road we started on 89 days ago. And before we got to Enterprise, miles from the airport because it was a much cheaper location, I pulled over to a side street to remove the dash cam and the mount from the windshield. Masao tried to hold the dash cam steady with her hand to capture the final moments of driving, the final approach to Enterprise. But while getting the paperwork done, the guy there said we could drive the car all the way to the airport if we wanted and he wouldn't charge us. Perfect. I wasn't quite sure how we were going to get across town anyway. And not wanting to miss anything, I taped the dash cam back in place, and we took off for one last bonus drive. I soon saw why Enterprise would rather I drive this through LA than them. This is notorious Interstate 405, America's busiest and most congested freeway. Often bumper to bumper, but not too bad today. At LAX, we returned the car for real. The final reading on the odometer was 14,617.6 miles. Almost 15,000. Close enough. Great job, little white Toyota. We've seen a lot together. Masao and I actually had one more night in a hotel before leaving, right at the airport. A buffer night in case we got hung up somewhere along the way, just to make sure we got our flight. My favorite part was the room service we indulged in. $70 for this. The kind of thing we'd only do at the very end of a trip. It was pretty good, and I called the extension they gave me to come take the table away. They said okay, but nobody came. I called again later and nobody answered. But no matter. I spent the evening watching the planes and cars outside and taking time-lapse videos of all the madness. On the morning of day 90, the room service scraps were still there. Amused, I mentioned it in passing to the clerk when I checked out, and she immediately apologized and removed the entire room service charge from the bill. Instant $70 rebate. Awesome. Later, on the plane over the Pacific Ocean, I drew from memory our trip route on a magazine in my seat. 15,000 miles, nearly, 90 days, 21 states, at least 52 national parks and other sites, countless cities and small towns, hotels and campsites, and all of it almost entirely without interstates, and driving the actual speed limits. Also, 397 blood sugar checks. Average reading, 178. So-so. And most importantly, we have a list of hundreds or thousands of things on the way that we missed. You could spend your whole life traveling and not see 1% of the world. That's what makes it so worth it. Stay curious, and thanks for traveling with me. I'll see you on the next adventure.